And now back to the deadly New Year's terrorist attack in New Orleans. Federal authorities are laying out a timeline, saying the man responsible rented the truck he used in the attack on December 30th in Houston, Texas. He then drove across state lines into Louisiana on the evening of December 31st. Officials say in the hours and minutes leading up to the attack, he posted videos online proclaiming his support for ISIS and explaining part of his plan. The FBI also just released a bulletin showing new images of the attacker and a cooler containing an IED. Authorities are asking for information on the man responsible and anyone who may have come into contact with one of these coolers. CBS News Confirmed executive editor Rhona Tarrant joins me now. So, Rhona, what more have we learned about the attacker's background?
So authorities gave us some new information today, for example, that he had pledged allegiance to ISIS as far back as last summer. But there really are so many open questions at this point. We know this guy served in the military. He served in active duty from 2007 to 2015. We know he joined the reserves at that point and actually went back to college. He studied computers in college. He joined some consulting firms, and then he joined Deloitte in 2021. We also know in his personal life, he went through 3 divorces in recent years. We also know in his most recent divorce in 2022 that he was reporting some financial difficulties. So he said he was in, for example, debt of over $40,000. He said he was making a salary of 6 figures, around $125,000 a year, but that he was struggling financially. But at this point, quite a lot of open questions about someone who was holding down, a type of job like that, who seemed relatively normal, had served honorably in the military, could have carried out this attack.
I mean, these images that we're seeing, they're so chilling that you see him in this long brown coat. He's, wearing what looked like brown dress shoes. That was him seemingly nonchalantly placing these IEDs. There were several that were placed in the French Quarter. I mean, what else do we know about the videos that authorities say he posted prior to the attack?
Yeah, so those new images are key because they've given several details about the hours leading up to the attack. Now, we know that he posted 5 videos on Facebook where he said he was intending to harm his family and friends, but that he wanted more attention for the attack. He wanted people to know about his ideology, and that's why he carried it out. He pledged allegiance to ISIS. Now, in these images, the FBI time-stamped that image, as you described, of him walking down the street to around 2 a.m.
Right.
So that
about an hour and 15 before he drove the truck through Bourbon Street.
Exactly. And what's striking to me about those images as well is he's actually wearing different clothes to what he was wearing when he drove the truck. So what's interesting about that point with the IEDs is, was he checking them at the time? We know President Biden said today that he had a remote detonator on him to explode them at some point, which thankfully he didn't do. But those images are giving extra clues into his movements and why he carried out the attack at the time that he did.
Yeah, we should be clear to note that law enforcement said that they rendered those devices safe. I want to ask you kind of a twofold question. So one is, there have been discrepancies between what law enforcement initially said yesterday, and they thought they were pretty confident that he had worked with someone. Today, they're adamant that they believe that he was solely responsible. If you can explain the fluidity of information in the immediate aftermath of these types of events. And also, I do want to mention the Cybertruck explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. We know that law enforcement are looking into whether there is any connection. Can you tell us some of the odd coincidences?
Yeah, so yesterday was a very fluid situation with both of these stories. Now, initially, authorities in New Orleans had reviewed CCTV where they saw people interacting with these coolers on the street. Now, they thought that maybe these people may have been working with him. There may be some connection or something like that. They reviewed all of the CCTV and they found 2 things. Number one, those people appeared to just be innocent bystanders who saw the coolers on the street. The second thing is they saw Jabbar placing them on the street. So that cleared that up. So initially it was reported that potentially there were other people connected to it, that maybe there were other devices. But that was sort of cleared up today. And I think part of that may have been an explanation as to why the Sugar Bowl, for example, was postponed if the city was safe. Now, on the connection to the Vegas attack, now authorities in both states were talking about that. They were saying both of them were looking into if there's any possible connections. Biden was speaking about it today. Everyone has said so far there's no evidence of any connections. But as you said, several coincidences. Both of these men served in the military, both served in Afghanistan, both spent time at Fort Bragg, both rented electric vehicles, both had some kind of explosive device, and both of them used the same app, which is the Turo app, to rent these vehicles. So President Biden said today he's asking authorities to keep looking into this. But as authorities in Las Vegas said in their press conference, this may just be a coincidence, and it might just be an incredible coincidence.
All right, Rhona Tarrant, always appreciate you. Thank you. And our Jason Allen is in the Houston neighborhood where 42-year-old Shamsud-Din Jabbar, the attacker in New Orleans, lived. Jason?
Well, the FBI has finished its work here in Houston, searching the property where Shamsud-Din Jabbar had been living. It is not this house you see immediately behind me, but just on the other side of this metal wall, a smaller trailer. And from the looks of the metal gate that leads to that trailer, the looks of the front door going into the trailer, FBI and investigators came in pretty forcefully, searching that trailer for any signs of planning for this attack, any signs that maybe some of the devices that were found in New Orleans had been put together here. They also had searched a Jeep that was on the property. This house on a street with maybe a dozen other homes here. We talked to some of the neighbors who live here, including a neighbor immediately next door to Jabbar, who said he spoke to him. He lived alone, never saw anybody with him. The last time he saw him was a couple days ago with that white truck parked out front, which would have been right before authorities say he left to New Orleans for this attack. Many of the folks here told us that they attend a mosque that is right down the street, but said that they have never seen Jabbar there at that mosque. This neighbor here said he'd invited him to come before, but Jabbar told him that he prays on his own at home. This news, they told us, really came as much as a shock and a surprise to them as it did to everyone else. In Houston, Jason Allen, back to you.
Jason, thank you.